Top-quality knives manufactured from chrome molybdenum steel and hardened under vacuum are characterized by an extremely durable cutting edge and high resilience. Nevertheless, in daily use a knife does meet with resistance, and even the sharpest of cutting edges will wear with use. The ideal way to achieve a sharp cutting edge is if the blade is ground in a slightly half-rounded shape towards the cutting edge. The technical term for this is a slightly convex grind. Knives can be sharpened using a variety of grinding methods, ranging from manual sharpening to machine grinding. The crucial factor for sharpness is the correct grinding angle. Depending on the type of knife, the grinding angle between the cutting edge and the grinding tool will be around 20 degrees. Here the grinding angle was 2 obtuse, and this also means that the cutting edge will become blunted far too quickly. Here again the cutting edge was ground too thin. With a hollow ground blade like this, the cutting edge will break under the slightest pressure. Here, on the other hand, the cutting edge has been ground to a wedge shape. This noticeably reduces the durability of the cutting edge. And this is a cutting edge that has been ground at the correct angle of approximately 20 degrees. The slightly convex cutting edge provides both sharpness and stability. The final sharpness of every good knife is achieved through 2 work processes. The initial rough grind produces a thicker burr or edge. In the second process, this edge is polished and thereby smoothed. An extremely fine microscopic burr consisting of many small teeth is produced. The animation shows in thousandfold magnification how the burr curves to the left or to the right during cutting according to the pressure exerted. There is always a danger that the edge will break and the knife will quickly become blunt. The edge is centered and smoothed again with a sharpening steel or manual sharpening tools. The knife remains sharp for longer and does not require regrinding so frequently. The diagram shows the relationship between the intervals at which sharpening takes place and the levels of sharpness achieved on a cutting edge. In the process shown at the bottom of the diagram, the interval before regrinding was too long. Although the cutting edge has been sharpened, it does not even come close to its original degree of sharpness. On the other hand, the process shown at the top proves that the sharpness of a cutting edge can be maintained for longer through regular sharpening at short intervals. When a classic sharpening steel is used, a few even strokes on each side are usually sufficient for the knife to regain its sharpness. The force used to press the knife against the steel depends on the degree of wear on the blade. The process is only continued until the knife has regained its sharpness. Additional strokes afterwards do not increase the degree of sharpness. And now more slowly to clarify what has been said. The angle between the sharpening steel and the knife should be about 20 degrees. The knife is held with the cutting edge diagonal to the steel as it is drawn across it. The knife is sharpened alternately left and right with a loose movement initiating from the wrist and in as large an arc as possible. No pressure, a little pressure or a great deal of pressure may be used when sharpening according to whether the cutting edge is new or has just been ground, is slightly worn down or really worn down. The degree of fineness of the rod is of crucial importance when selecting the sharpening steel. This degree of fineness is determined by the number of grooves or ridges on the rod. A fine sharpening steel has fewer, deeper ridges. An ultra-fine sharpening steel has a very large number of ridges set closely together. Whether a sharpening steel with fine or ultra-fine ridges is used is a matter of personal feeling. However, as a rule, the narrower the knife blade, the finer should be the ridges of the sharpening steel used. Every sharpening steel should meet 4 basic criteria. It should have a hard chrome-plated, corrosion-resistant rod. It should possess at least 65 Rockwell hardness. The handle should be made of hygienic plastic, and its fittings must be rust-proof. Special steel types with diamond or ceramic coating may also be used for sharpening. Their high degree of abrasiveness gives the cutting edge a wire edge or burr. It consists of material that has been stripped from the blade and the filaments of metal attached to the cutting edge. So a polishing steel should always be used after working with this type of sharpening steel. Otherwise, the cutting edge becomes rough and goes blunt again all too quickly. Polishing smooths the cutting edge again and ensures durability of the sharpening. Working with a manual knife grinder gives the opportunity for other kinds of grinding. A sharpening steel or sharpening stones can be used according to taste and what one is accustomed to. The rough grind is effected on the coarser side of the sharpening stone. The blade is drawn evenly over the stone, in small circular motions, alternating between one side and the other. Then the stone is turned round and the cutting edge is smoothed on the fine side. The angle used with a sharpening stone is also 20 degrees. Even the inexperienced can perform light sharpening and then polishing with manual sharpening tools such as the Prime Cut 1, for example. The handle end of the blade is placed on the tool and drawn through right to the tip of the blade whilst applying a gentle pressure. Polishing takes place in the upper section of the rods. In this case, there should only be a minimum upward movement of these. Honing takes place in the lower section of the rods. Move the knife blade laterally back and forth in a slicing downward movement to achieve the desired result. If the cutting edge or the microscopic burr simply needs centering or honing, then a few strokes in the upper polishing section of the bars should be sufficient. Or there is the Sharpen Easy knife sharpener, with which even beginners can obtain perfect results when sharpening blades. With this tool, the end of the blade is inserted as far as the guard and then drawn downwards whilst exerting a gentle pressure. The blade only goes as far as the end of the guard or to the V end. The procedure is repeated several times. With a Sharpen Easy, it is also possible to restore a cutting edge that has been more seriously damaged. The blade end is again placed in the knife sharpener and drawn through to the V end several times in a smooth, regular motion. But even the best cutting edge becomes worn with heavy use. Every cutting edge becomes increasingly flatter with abrasion, grinding and sharpening. The microscopic burr disappears. The edge becomes blunted and cannot be restored with a sharpening steel or tool alone. The knife must then be re-ground by machine. Worn cutting edges reduce productivity and mean increased accidents at work. So knives must undergo regular regrinding. The crucial factor for sharpness is the correct grinding angle. Depending on the type of knife, the grinding angle between the knife and the grinding tool will be around 20 degrees. The ideal way to achieve a sharp cutting edge is if the blade is ground in a slightly half-rounded shape towards the edge. It has a slightly convex grind. A flap wheel grinding machine cools the cutting edge with air during the grinding process. The flaps have the effect of a fan, thereby reducing the risk of overheating. The knife is pressed lightly against the abrasive belt, a few times for each side of the blade. The grinding angle is 20 degrees. Knives are always properly ground if there is a wire edge or burr. This burr must be ground off on the polishing wheel. For this reason, it is necessary to go through two work processes, even with machine grinding. After the first grind, polishing or sharpening paste is applied to the polishing wheel. A gentle pressure is exerted as the blade is then passed over the polishing wheel at a more acute angle. This polishes away the ground burr. This process is repeated until the wire edge has completely disappeared. In order to optimize the sharpness of the blade, a hand grinding tool or a polishing steel is used after the grinding cycles in order to finalize the edging to its proper setting. The blade will be sharpened perfectly after a few strokes. The Prometo M&S 630 Superschliff is a wet belt grinding tool. Water cooling minimizes the risk of overheating. The cutting edge remains cool at all times. The rotating belt is immersed in the water bath, where it cools off and then carries back large particles of water with it, which cool the blade as it is being ground. In the case of machine grinding, the knife is placed where the abrasive belt leaves the contact disc. The exertion of a slight pressure with the fingers is sufficient to create the proper angle, and the soft contact disc adapts to the shape of the knife. The grinding angle is always 20 degrees. After the rough grind, the burr on the blade must be rubbed off on the polishing wheel. Polishing or sharpening paste is applied to the polishing wheel, and the blade is then passed over the polishing wheel several times from both sides whilst applying a gentle pressure. Afterwards, either a polishing steel or a hand honing tool may be used to finalize the edging. A perfect finish for a blade. In the case of the Wiegand wet grinding machine, the knife is held by the handle in the right hand, whilst the left hand guides the back of the knife with the thumb and forefinger. The knife is then positioned flat against the outer grinding angle guides of the grindstone. The knife is then moved back and forth several times whilst applying a slight pressure. This procedure is repeated on the inside and outside of the grindstone until a continuous burr has been created on the cutting edge. Next, the knife is positioned against the outer grinding angle guide of the sharpening and polishing wheel. Again, the cutting edge is moved back and forth whilst applying a gentle pressure until the burr on the cutting edge has been removed. The knife is finished with the polishing steel or a hand grinding tool. The Sharp XE Diamond Knife Sharpener achieves the convex grind on the cutting edge using a patented technique with ductile diamond blades. The knife is inserted at the handle end of the cutting edge and is drawn towards the operator through the grinding head. The grinding angle is predetermined by the guide. The knife is inserted against the resistance of the spoked wheel and pressed against it. The procedure is carried out at a brisk speed so that the cutting edge does not overheat. The contour of the knife must be maintained when it is drawn through the sharpener, so this is done in a circular movement to the end of the knife. The knife is repeatedly drawn through the grinding head until a burr has formed. It can then be polished off. In the case of the Sharp XE, the handle end of the knife is inserted horizontally in the guide slot of the polishing tool. It is then pressed against the two metal guide rollers and drawn through to the tip of the knife. The procedure is repeated alternating from left to right about 3 or 4 times on each side, until the burr on the cutting edge has been rubbed off. The sharpness of the blade can be optimized when the final wire edge of the cutting edge is repositioned with a hand grinding tool or a polishing steel. The blade has then been resharpened to its maximum sharpness. The CC2100 commercial from Edgecraft is suitable mainly for chefs and kitchen knives. It is easy to use so that even the inexperienced can soon learn how to resharpen knives perfectly. The knife is drawn through several stations with preset grinding angles. It is not possible to burn the blade, even if heavy pressure is exerted. When the knife is drawn through the sharpener, always towards the person, contact must always be maintained with the diamond rollers inside. It is important to draw the left and right sides of the knife through alternately. The knife is as good as new again, as the finger test shows. Regardless of the method used, machine grinding, sharpening steel, grinding stone or manual sharpening tool, good knives must be reground regularly. Worn cutting edges reduce productivity and mean increased accidents at work. However, with a little practice and the appropriate grinding tools, the cutting edge will maintain its quality for a long time. Regular regrinding and polishing guarantee sharp blades for daily use.